Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Long time no see.
It's been a little while, but you've been quite busy on your travels and stuff as well.
Yes, yes, very busy. Always busy. Things always happening. Oh, and here's Robin as well.
Hi.
Hey,
I think,
Robin. How are you?
yeah, you two know each other well, don't you, from the Suffolk backyard?
We do, yes. And it was awesome, and I can't wait to go again this year.
Ah, are you running?
No, no, not a maniac.
Surely that's the perfect next step after a 24-hour track race.
I did actually think that, but you have to do a lot of stopping, don't you?
A lot of what?
A lot of stopping.
Yeah, I suppose so. Well, anyway, welcome, Lindley. Um, uh, uh, I mean, this. So thinking about it, when I asked you on, actually thinking about it, you've done so much um, in the sort of ultra running industry. There's so much you're known for. Not only some really epic races, but obviously the spine. I mean, surely Kit Check is more famous than the race itself now. And you're being a medic and sort of safety as well. So what sort of aspect do you find yourself most aligned with that you kind of view yourself as more?
I don't particularly view myself as more of anything. I like to, as a person and an individual, I sort of like to evolve. If I do one thing for too long, I tend to get a little bit bored. So I work best if I've got lots of things going on, which can make things seem a little bit manic or not. But like you're saying, I do obviously my races. I have a first aid company, and I do some consultancy work for the spine. I either kit check and plan all the routes and things, and then I do a lot of foreign expedition leading for another company, and then a few other little bits of freelance stuff, including
Ah,
driving trucks on my days off. Sometimes if I've got some free time, and I do all sorts of different things. Pay the
really?
yeah yeah pays the bills, but also it's things I like doing. So I like to keep quite busy.
Yeah. I'm just remembering actually looking at your background, that I was watching your van build very closely when you did that. That was fascinating. Is that all finished now?
That van build was 5 years ago. Um,
No.
And the van
Oh,
the van was all built, and you still do the odd little tweak here and then, but I'm sitting in the van right now, so you can probably see
yeah,
shelves in the van behind me. But
yeah.
yes, that was 5 years ago, and yeah,
Oh
it's
my
it's
God.
coming up for 5 years old now, heading towards 100,000 miles. The van, but I've
Surely it
got to,
would last, yeah.
I know I've got to decide the end of this year when the lease on the van is up whether I buy it off the lease company and continue with it, or whether I get a different van and build that out. So it'll just depend on you know
Yeah.
finances and organizing stuff and things. So it'll
Oh
be
my
interesting.
goodness. So how does that work with a lease? Would you have to strip it out before you hand it back?
Yes,
If
if
you hand it.
I'm handing it back, I just strip it out. But everything's just bolted into the frame. It would take me probably a day or two to strip it back out. But so it would be potentially removable. If I
Oh,
decide to purchase the vehicle and sell it myself, or purchase the vehicle and continue with it, then obviously you wouldn't have to do anything with it. So
oh.
you could sell it as a camper at the end of that. So, but yeah, it's 5 years old now, starting to get a little bit tired looking in places. It's a few bumps and things on it, but yeah, it seems to be working as my house.
Yeah. Is it a good event vehicle?
Yeah, it's great for event stuff. Obviously, Robin would have seen it at Suffolk backyard, and it's a
Mm.
massive power bank. It's a massive.
Yeah.
It's somewhere to sleep. Obviously, it's got heating and all the rest of it. Running water, cooking facilities and stuff like that in it. But yeah, so it works really well as an event vehicle, or taking it to events that are longer for medic stuff and that, because have a nice warm, dry place you can sit in. So it works quite well for that sort of stuff. Especially when I don't have an actual house. So
Yeah, the Starlink from Lindley's van was always better than the public one. So you find yourself sort of huddling over to that one to get the best signal to post reels and keep people updated on the backyard. Yeah, it's quite the work of art, that van, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you were obviously, Robin, as you were involved with the backyard, why don't we start with that? Because you know, that's something that's really exploded, hasn't it? And you've got two now, Suffolk and Thetford. What sort of started you on that road with that?
Oh, so from a backyard point of view, obviously they've been going for a few years now, but it was a friend of mine, Sammy Day, who owns Atlas Running in Northern Ireland. He'd come to one or possibly even two of my events, and we chatted and got on and whatever. But he set one up in Northern Ireland. So last one standing, he called them in Northern Ireland. And then he spoke to me about trying to get one off the ground in England. And so between myself and him, we set up the first ever one in England the year after he did his first one, and that was Last One Stand in England. And me and Sammy worked together on that for 2 years whilst we were trying to grow it. And then we made the decision that he would concentrate on his ones in Northern Ireland, and I would continue with the one in England, but renamed it Suffolk Backyard Ultra, so it wasn't obviously sounding the same as his. And yeah, backyard stuff sort of took off. Me and Sammy went and ran the original one in America with a couple of other people. That was when you could just get in by paying them. I think it was $100 or $110. We flew out there. We did the race. I spent another 2 weeks there hiking around the Berkeley course and some of the bits around there, which was obviously quite interesting. And then it's just sort of grown from there. You know, obviously now I think at the last count there was like 50 in the UK. Backyard races are sort of that sort of number. A lot of them very small, and we seem to have managed to maintain a reasonable number of hours. Obviously, this year at Suffolk we had 380 something entries, but there was quite a lot of no shows on the day. I think because windy weather and stuff. But there was just under 300 people on the day, which is one of the biggest ones around, which is
Yeah,
quite cool and makes it quite a festival feeling. It's just sort of grown. I think people like the format because you don't have to be an elite runner to do well in a backyard. In fact, most of the winners and the top guys in backyards, you know, objectively wouldn't, not to say they're not great runners, but wouldn't win their local marathon, wouldn't win their local 100-mile race, wouldn't win any big international races. You know, there are exceptions to that. But in general, they're not the people that are winning backyards. There are the people who can endure and put up with stuff and work with the format, and people who are physically and mentally tough, because being super fast doesn't win you a backyard.
mm,
It can
mm,
help make your life easy when you're jogging around at a really easy pace, but we see people come and run 25-minute laps and they don't last very long. We see people doing 30 to 40-minute laps and running for, you know, several days.
yeah,
It's an interesting format, and you can come along and have a go, you know, and you start every lap with the same people. It's not like a normal ultra where, you know, fastest guy in the world will go off at the start and you'll never see him again. So you don't feel like, for people in the
yeah,
mid packers and stuff, you don't feel like you're running with those people. You were just at the same race and they're gone. Whereas at a backyard, you're all starting the same, you're all chatting. Nothing really warms up until you get quite a long way into the race as far as the top level competition is concerned. You know, you don't really see who the potential winners are until at least 24 hours, and then you start to see what you're left with. But everyone has their own individual target, so it's not an elitist race. Everybody has their own target. Some people will come along and they'll do 4 laps and they'll be chuffed to bits for that because that's the furthest they've ever run. Other people will come along and have a 50-mile, 100-mile, 100k type target and do the number of laps for that and be chuffed to bits. And then other people will just want to do the best they can with regard, you know, with regardless of how far they actually get. You know, we have people in the past that have come along and done 2 laps just because they wanted the dog tag, the the DNF
it is
prime.
quite cool, I have to say.
Well, the dog tag was there because when I ran the one in the States, you know, Laz doesn't give any sort of trophy, prize, or memorabilia for anybody in backyard
Mm,
in the bigs,
mm,
because quite frankly, I think it's more a case of it's the psychology of the thing. If you're going to get something for failure, then you're more comfortable with failure, and therefore, um, it's the idea is not to be horrible to people. It's to push people further by saying you're going to get virtually nothing unless you
mm,
push and get something else. So everything's geared towards being the best. But the guys, the timing guys, the two Mikes, Mike Melton and Mike Dobies, they made little dog tags. they made little dog tags, which is one of them sitting on my car keys at the moment. And that just said I gave my all at Big's backyard. So my idea was, rather than give a trophy, and lots of races do it differently, but rather than give a trophy or a prize or a medal for DNF, we give them something they can remember the race by, but not something that's a big Larry medal. Oh look, I'm awesome. I DNF'd. It's like,
Yeah.
it's more, I remember I DNF'd at that. I must come back and do better type thing. For me, it fits in with the psychology of it. And as Robin will tell you from being there, it's like we have a bell that you have to ring when you DNF. We call it the bell of shame. Um, but it's not about shame. It's about everyone knowing that you've stopped and they can clap and they can cheer and they
Yeah.
can encourage you. But obviously, we like to give it a funny name. But and it amuses me a little bit. But the main thing is that everybody then gives them attention and they'll clap, as Robin I'm sure will attest to in a moment. They all clap once somebody stops and makes that decision, and everyone cheers them. And again, the bell is a psychology thing. It's are we going to, just let them skulk away and DNF, come across the line, don't start again and disappear? Actually, it
Yeah.
lets us know that they've DNF'd so we can make sure it's correct on the timing and stuff. But also, by ringing the bell, they might go one more lap, because they might come in and go, "Oh, if I have to ring the bell now, but they're all going to give me grief. My crew are going to give me grief. My friends will give me grief. I need to go out for one more time, and I need to DNF out on the course." And again, it's all the psychology of, I don't want to ring the bell. I don't want to. We make them cross their own name off the entry list that's stuck to the table. It's all psychology of trying to make them go and run as many as they really can, not just stop when it's getting a bit challenging, but actually do their
Yeah.
best, because ultra runners are sometimes people who mentally will go away and criticize themselves at the end and go, "Oh my God, I didn't go far enough." But if we do everything we can to poke them, to make them go as far as they can, then hopefully they DNF rather than they give up or they stop when they meet some arbitrary target they've got in their head. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And it starts as soon as they start approaching the timing tent where the bell is. There's already a few staff just in between the runner and the forfeit to ask them, "Are you sure you want to walk? You look like you're walking over there. Do you want to walk over there? Maybe you should go back to your tent, just to get a bit more food and get ready for the next lap." And it's trying to you try and turn them around as soon as possible and make them second guess whether they really want to stop. And there's a few walls they've got to break down before they really get to that bell. And I think that's really great, to really push people as many laps as they can go, because the mental aspect of it is really, really vicious, isn't it? It's very difficult for people to keep going when they start having those thoughts.
Oh, interesting. What
Yeah.
else did you take from that, Robin? I know you really enjoyed being down there.
I really enjoyed the community aspect of it. It's really exciting to see how much runners can band together in this format. That is just, as you say, as Lindley says, like, normally you see the best runners go off at the beginning of a race and that's it. They're gone. They're gone forever. But even in this lap, you've got people coming back somewhere between sort of 40 minutes and even 58, 59 minutes. They've got a bit of time to chat to each other at the start line, in the pen, the corral, the starting corral, as you called it, to review how they're doing in the race, how other people are managing to do better than they are at this point. You don't really get that from any other type of race. You'll get it at checkpoints from other people who've done it in the past, but to talk to other people who you would deem having more success in the race so far by looking fresher. I mean, maybe they might be putting that on, and that gets into the head-to-head mind games later on. But it's nice to see how runners mix and can bond and gel and help each other through more laps. And that's sort of the point of the format as well, is that you need at least one other person, otherwise you aren't going any further either. So there needs to be some kind of give there to get your own, like, personal goal out of the event.
Yeah, you need each other, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. You got other events, some pretty savage ones. I mean, you've got the Nice to Stort 30, that's coming up, isn't it? I remember that was my mate Conrad's first ever ultra. But then you got the Thames Ring 250 that you've just offered a couple more um, distances on, haven't you? I mean, that's how do you come up with running around London?
Um, I I never came up with a Thames Ring. I ran Grand Union Canal Race a few times, and the then organizer of it, Dick Kern, then also set up this even harder race, which was the Thames Ring 250, which had less support, less checkpoints, more distance, more time on your own. And I heard about it. I ran Grand Union in 2000 and I don't know 10 or 11 I think it was, and then this is when I heard about Thames Ring, and so I went and helped on Thames Ring for a day, or 2 or 3 days it ended up being out of a 4 day race. So I helped between shifts. When I used to be a firefighter, I had my 3 days off, so I helped on those 3 days, and then I obviously earned a place to come back and run the next year. So I came back the next year and ran it. I was a DNF. I got injured fairly early, and but vowed to come back again. But then Dick decided that he didn't want to continue organising that race alongside the canal races and all that stuff. So you know, went and had a chat with him, and essentially I became the custodian of the race in 2015. So good thing is I don't have to run it, but but I can. But I've organised it since then, and it used to be a biannual race. So we had a 15, a 17, a 19, and then obviously COVID put a bit of a dent in things, and then we started making it an annual race, which has continued with about the same amount of numbers we get. We get somewhere between 30 and 50 entries, with about 30 or 40 starting on the day in most cases. And because it is a silly extreme thing, it's not signed, it's not managed, as in you don't have a checkpoint every 8 miles. It's checkpoints are around a marathon apart and stuff like that. So it's going to appeal to a certain type of person.
Mm,
But we decided this year that we're looking at the timings of the logistics and how few people we have on the course and into the buildings and stuff that we hire, we have capacity for more. And a bit like what's been done with Spine and a few other races, we thought we'd try and do some introductory distances on the event
mm,
within the same time frames. And mainly we don't have to put the price up. We get more people in, we can cover the stuff, but also we give people a stepping stone, because 250 miles is a massive jump if you've only done a 100 miler or something like that. So we want people to have that opportunity and come and recce the course. They can recce the course as a race. So the first sort of almost 2/3 up to Nether Hayford, which is, we put it as 150 miles. It's about 156 officially. That will be the first 150. It's much easier to call it 150. 250 isn't 250 miles either. It's 258.
I bet that last 8 hurts.
That doesn't sound right on a medal. So technically it's 250 if you measure on the waterways maps, because you're measuring from the center of the waterway, but it doesn't count all the deviations from the canal and bridges and stuff. That gives you your extra 8 miles and detours and things. So it's about 158 miles. And then the last 100 miles from that big indoor checkpoint that we have at Nether Hayford at a village hall, the last 100 miles from there and it's actually about 97, 98 miles from there, would give you another 100-mile race. And actually we looked at the timings and we thought, we don't have to open the checkpoints any longer. We might have to add a few more staff and things like that, but we don't have to open the checkpoints any more longer. All the cutoffs still work at all the checkpoints, apart from we bring them forward a little bit for the 100-mile race one, because we want them finished by Saturday night. But that's still going to be a relatively generous 34-ish hours for a flat 100, which, if you compare that to most hundreds out there, they're usually running around between 28 and 30, 32 miles, most of the average hundreds. So it's a relatively generous 100-mile distance. So we thought we'd give people the opportunity to come and get a similar thing. The medal won't be the almost kilo of stainless steel that they get on the on the big race, but there will be similar smaller versions of it that will get made up, and hopefully that will encourage people to come and have a go in sections, and just put another 100-miler on the market and a
Yeah.
nice stepping stone distance. There are very few races that are between 100 and 200 miles. You've got Grand Union and the canal races, but other than that, there's very little in the UK of around that distance.
Mm.
And most of them tend to run alongside rivers and canals, because it's much easier to get permissions and organize that sort of stuff. It's like backyards,
Is it?
they have to go on certain sites, because you can't go to a place or a venue and go, we know when it starts, we have no idea when it finishes. It's the same with this yacht. It's a long period of distance.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. Uh, okay, so the Thames Ring is mainly canals, is it? And I was
It's
going to
rivers.
ask about roads.
It's rivers and canals. So you start in Goring or Streatley on Thames, whichever side of the bridge we start, whether we start at the Village Hall or the Morale Rooms, either side of the bridge. But you run east along the Thames until you get into the edge of central London. Then you go north on the Grand Union Canal, and then you come off on the Oxford Arm and the Oxford Canal down through Windsor, and back onto the Thames. So it's a big circle. It's the Thames Ring, as I understand it, is actually a canal boat tour, which would normally
Oh,
take people on canal boats a couple of weeks because they've got, I think it's 147 locks on the journey. So they would do a section of it each day, and that would be like a nice canal boat holiday. I think that's where Dick got the original idea for. Dick and a guy called Anthony, they both set that up back in 2009. So most of the work they did most of the work for me, where I've just tweaked it and fixed stuff as we went along and added a few things like trackers and stuff like that, and a few new locations. But yeah, it's an interesting race, and it's definitely appeals to a certain type of person because, like I said before, it's not signed. You're not, what's the right word? You're not supported fully all the way along the way. You're very
yeah.
much on your own. It's very much an adventure. You're very much self-sufficient. Apart from every 25 miles, you get access to your drop bag and your spare stuff, and you will get some food and drink, and from 75 miles in, you can have a nap in a tent and things like that. But it's very much a non-stop. You're in your own time and living with your own thoughts type race, and a certain type of person likes that.
Mm,
Some people don't like it because they have to pay attention to the maps that we provide or the GPX files, and they can't just follow signs. But it makes it a more niche event, but it
yeah.
seems fairly respected.
I mean, we're seeing a bit of a rise in the 200 miler races, aren't we? Certainly in the US, and now James has brought on the Winter Downs 200. Do you think I think it's a growing distance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are several sort of avenues to that. Like Thames Ring was the only one in Europe at that distance back in the 2009 tens and stuff. That was the big daddy, but very underground. Nobody knew about it because you had to fill in a form and post it into somebody for them to do it. And that form didn't exist anywhere except on one website or via an email. And that website, no one edited anything because it was like sort of flip phone type website. It was very basic, so you had to hear from people where to get this form. But now, obviously, social media helps a lot because stuff gets promoted quite heavily. But also, I think, and a marathon is a very long way and a very difficult thing. But I think when people are doing stuff, whether it's for personal challenge or charity challenges, or just to see how far they can go, the marathon seems a lot more mundane to people now. It seems like, oh, anyone can run a marathon. I know it's hard. People might think that comment's condescending, but it's not. The marathon's a really long way and it's difficult. If 5K is massively difficult if you've never done a 5K. But people who keep pushing themselves and want to challenge themselves further find out I can do a marathon, I can do a 50, I can actually do 100 if I do some training. I can do 150 if I'm just a stubborn git, and so on. And then they start looking at it and going, well, what's the next thing that I need
Yeah,
to be? And that I think that used to be multi-day stuff like your MDS and your sandbagger type stuff, and all of the race the planet type things. That I think that's where that used to be. But I think now people are realizing we can do those sorts of distances in the UK. Like you say, James has obviously the Winter 200, which started a few years ago. The Thames Ring exists. The Grand Union ones are obviously all around 140, 150. And Race Across Scotland's a couple of hundred miles that GB Ultras do, and there's a few like that now. Northern Traverse, Coast to Coast.
coast to coast. Yeah.
There's a lot of variations of that coming up. You've got some of the more extreme silliness that Mark Cockbain does, like Lon Lass, which is coming up very soon, and you have
Mm.
his loop that he's putting in for the London Outer Orbital Path and stuff like that. So they're very niche because he's very minimal support, very very little managed, and so you're very much on your own on those. And again, that appeals to another certain niche of people. But I think it's growing. I think if you want to get a real challenge, you're just stepping up every time you can find something you can complete. You keep finding something else you might not be able to complete. I think people are trying to find their limits, and I think that's indicative of our normal sort of technological life in the UK, in that we're sitting here and we don't get a lot of physical challenge in our lives anymore. We don't get a lot of very serious mental challenge in our life. So what we do is we're looking for these things. We're looking for the hard stuff to fulfill that caveman sort of adrenaline rush or challenge. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's good, and it is interesting to see how far people can go. You know, if you look at backyard, we had the world record 5 years ago with 81 yards, 81 hours of continuous stuff, and we thought that's ridiculous. You know, no one can run for, like, you know, that's just stupid, and we thought those people were broken at the end. And now, you know, if you look at it now, it's 116 by
Mm,
very recently. You know, will it be 120, 130 soon? Who knows? You just got to have the right circumstances and the right people, and people willing to do that. Like Robin said earlier, the worst thing with backyard is, doesn't matter how good you are, you need someone who's almost as good to run with you and
yeah.
put up with it. And if they bin it at any point, you don't get to continue. So it's a very cruel race. And that second person, no one really remembers the assist, as it's called in backyard. You know, I bet if we asked loads of people, they probably couldn't remember. Like Sam Harvey was the assist in the recent record, and he's finished at 2 or 3 times as the assist there, which is obviously challenging for him. But no one really remembers the assist much.
Yeah.
So it's all or nothing. It's, you know, glory or failure. But that has its own unique things. You know, it fits into the ethos of the stuff that Laz does. He's very psychological in his races, just like Barkley and all that. He wants things to be on the edge of what's possible, because his sort of quotes are like, you know, you can't really have proper success unless there's a realistic risk of failure. And obviously that's a Barkley thing, but it goes into backyard as well. You have to give everything in order to get
Mm,
a win, rather than
mm.
just jog round a course that you know you can complete. So it's a different mentality for that type of event. But we hope, and I'm sure Robin can attest to that, we try and make a very festival feel that encourages everybody. Like we've done with the backyards now, we're offering a 6 and 12 hour option for those people that, you know, feel that it's expensive. I don't think it's expensive, because you get a lot for the money you pay. But some people feel it's expensive if they know they're only going to come and do 5 or 6 hours.
Hmm.
And so we're given a 6 and 12 hour option that is obviously a little bit cheaper. It can't be massively cheaper, because the venue, the toilets, all that stuff still costs the same money, but we can reduce the fee a little bit. And hopefully 6 and 12 hour options will encourage more people to come and have a crack at it and have a go, and they feel like it's a bit better value. You know, because we just want to see more people at it. We want to see it as the biggest event out there of that type. We're not going to beat the Australian ones at 5 or 600, but we want it to be a massive event and a big festival. So we want it to be a festival of sort of backyard stuff. So hopefully it'll keep growing.
And the primary thing about where you're set up there is the course is just so amazing. And I would love to burn around that 6 hours instead of like spacing out. Goodness knows how long you're going to be there for a backyard. So it offers something different, not only for people who think 6 hours is all I can do. It's like, what can I do in 6 hours? Because that is so runnable. You could really have a great time, really gunning it
It's
round there.
it's it's tempting, I have to say. So do you invite sort of companies like gear companies or something to come and pitch up, or to give that festival feel?
We haven't really in the past, because the venue we used previous was quite small and didn't have that ability to pitch loads of stuff on it. It wasn't really a smooth field, so it's something we're looking in for next year. I will, over the winter, start emailing some places and see if I can get some people to, you know, because we have the space now. We have vendors for food now, which the guys there do a great job, and so the idea is we want to expand that facility and try and get some either more sponsors on board. We used to have sponsors, but we don't have a sponsor for the event for next year. So we'd like to get some more sponsors on board that can, you know, provide prizes and stuff. But we'd also like, you know, get to get people down. It's one of those weird things. The numbers aren't massively big, but those people are going to be there for 24, 48 hours,
Yes.
maybe
Yes.
maybe longer. So yeah, we'd love to do something like that. It's something we hopefully are going to try and work on in the winter time, emailing some companies and see if they want to come down and sell some of their stuff or whatever.
Mm,
It's
mm.
whether they feel they'll get enough sales, because if you compare it to something like the running show or London Marathon Expo, where they'll get, you know, 20, 30,000 people through the door, for their sales. It's quite difficult. You're going to have the same few hundred people going around, and the runners don't have much time to buy stuff. It's the it'll be the crews and stuff. So it'll be an interesting discussion. But I'm going to try and see if we can get a couple of companies. Usually, like, we used to be sponsored by Phoenix Head Torches for all of our events, but I think they were still getting into the market. They were trying to grow their brand in the market. They're sort of there now, helped by people like Jack Scott with winning Spine using one of their torches. So I think they don't need to probably approach small companies like me anymore. They can go for bigger stuff. So that's just a marketing thing. But we'd like to get on board. I have a couple of small companies that do like gels and bars and stuff that I need to get in touch with and see if they want to come down there and provide some bits and maybe help out on the event and stuff. That's always something we're quite willing to have as well, people to come down and help out and see what it is. And we love clubs, and if brands want to come down as well, coming down, and we've got no objection to them putting their banners up and helping out at the event. And that we want to try and like Robin said, we want it to be a community field, rather than, yes, we are a commercial company, but we don't want it to look like we're just there to make money. We're not. I won't mention any big race names, but we're not a company that's just there to take your money and provide a sort of lackluster service. We want people to come along and have fun, and it's fun for me to see people have fun and a bit of banter and get on with it, even if I do sometimes have to tell people they're timed out and things.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds brilliant, I have to say. I'm kind of tempted with the 6 hour one.
Yeah, the 6 hour one's exactly the same. 6 and 12 is exactly the same as the main one. It's not like you run as far as you can in 6 hours.
No.
You are still complying with the backyard rules. You just
All right, okay, that's cool.
You're just doing
Yeah.
a short. I think Robin maybe had it a little bit backwards
Yeah.
earlier. But you're just doing a version. So when you get to 6 hours, you will just have completed the 6 hours.
Yeah.
If you don't make the 6 hours, you'd be DNF on the main event,
Yeah.
on the event. But once you got to 6 hours, the system would automatically DNF you or take you out of
Yes.
the race.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine within backyard rules, as long as everyone starts at the same time and competes on the same course. Because you can't have people starting later or anything, because then they'd be assisting people who are getting tired and stuff like that. So there's a very strict rule of no support on the course, no pacing, all that type of stuff. It's very much your own solo challenge. And like Robin said, the course is amazing for it. It's the flattest course we could find, and I'd beg to find anybody who thinks the course has any real hills in it. There's one hill, but it's not really a hill. It's an incline for a couple of 100 meters, and the first mile and a quarter are downhill. It's like on a massive wide track. It should, if we can get the right people there next year, it's definitely a course that's good
Record.
for potentially a record, but definitely I think we can push our best that we've had in the UK, which is 88 yards a couple of years ago at Suffolk. I definitely think we can push 88 yards.
Yeah, I remember Mike, is it Mike got that? Who got those? Who got that?
So the 81 was John Stocker, who did that back then.
John Stocker, that was it.
That was John Stocker, and the 88 was Lukasz Robel, Polish guy, who then went on to break the record in Belgium.
That's right.
Earlier this year, which was then subsequently broken again. But yeah, he was still fresh at the 88. He was still going around in 35 minutes if he wanted to. He was averaging like around 40 minutes and still looking pretty good. He had an amazing crew. I think his wife and his mum and that were there, and they were just taking superb care of him every time he arrived. They would change his shoes, dry his shoes out, wash his clothes, feed him. His mum was like pretty much washing his clothes between laps and rinsing them out and drying them. She had a whole cycle of clothes. He had a shoe rack in his gazebo. There was a massage table, so he just lay on the table and went to sleep while they swapped his shoes and his clothes, and they were on top of it.
Robin, you need to train Jen.
I know, this is the dream.
I think Jen got involved anyway by doing some of the little video clips and some of the other ideas and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds. I think it sounds. I mean, I have always been fascinated by the concept, so much more so than, sorry, Robin, something like a track race. I think it is. It's that mental aspect of the stop and the start again. That's where to me, that's where the challenge lies.
Yeah, it's very much you're not running your race, you're running our race. Whereas like Robin's done great stuff on a track, or you do a point to point, you can have a ropey moment on the track and step off for half an hour and have a sleep. You can't do that in a backyard. If you're
No.
feeling unwell, you can disappear to the toilets on a track. I've medicked lots of track races and been involved in them, and but backyard, you can't have a bad hour. You can't have a ropey bit where you walk around really slowly. You can't go and be sick in a bush for 10 minutes. It doesn't happen. You if you're doing well, you might have 15 minutes when you get back, but by the time you go to the loo, get a drink, have something to eat, swap one shoe, that happens. We had a guy ran a few years ago, ran 3 laps with one trail shoe and one road shoe, because he was finishing in like 58 minutes and he didn't have time. 58, 50.
Oh,
He didn't have
oh
time
no,
to fit all again.
that's
So
incredible, isn't it?
and in Thetford, which is obviously the sort of newer version, we had Chris Cope, who turned up this year, who's double spine winner. He's a pretty handy runner. He'd done a Bob Graham the week before in the low 20s hours, and he came and he was doing it hopefully as a recce to come back in the summer, which would be great. But he was like learning a lot on it. It's a whole different beast, because people like him, people with Robin standard, just run off. They slow down, but they slow down at a certain rate, and they know they can have a bad few miles. But Chris was feeling a bit unwell at points, and that made things difficult because he had to feel unwell, but then get back out there.
But keep going.
And
Yeah.
it's a whole different mental thing. It's not your race. But conversely, we find a lot of people find it easier to get to 100 miles in 24 hours in a backyard, because you're being forced to manage yourself. You've come back and you've got 10 minutes spare. You may as well eat, you may as well drink, you may as well do that. There are things you maybe forget sometimes on a trail race. You run and you feel a bit of a dicky tummy, or you think, oh, I'll go to the toilet in a bit, and you hold it in or whatever. There's no point doing any of that. Or you run off too quick early on in a long race. You don't do that. There's no point. As Robin will say, the actual good guys that we expect to go far are not the first ones back on the laps. They're never the first ones back on the laps. They're cruising in a time that's comfortable for them within their own management, usually somewhere around 40 minutes. But there'll be people fly off and go fast. I don't know what the fastest lap was at Suffolk this year, but it was like, I think, low 30s.
Low
So
30s, I think. Yeah, like 30, 31. Yeah.
yeah, but those people didn't win. those people find they burn out fairly quickly. So it's a very different concept. It's not your race. It's a race you're in, but it's not your race, as in timings and management. You're doing that within the confines of a very strict set of parameters.
When someone gets back early, you actually worry for them that they're not pacing it properly, and that they're not going to go as far as they might have claimed they could or wanted to, because you see the people who've actually done it arriving almost at the back of the pack, big smile on their face. They know exactly what they're doing. Like you mentioned, Claire Banworth
Yeah.
would always, she'd come back with very little time. And did you say she always took off her shoes, even if there was only a minute or two remaining?
Yeah,
Really?
she was getting in somewhere between 54 and 57 minutes. She did 61 and broke the French record, and it's the furthest distance a female has done in the UK. And she did that with having 3 or 4 minutes each time, but she'd get back, she took her shoes off, sometimes her socks, and she aired her feet out, she sat up, she ate something, she literally put her shoes back on, and she left again. And she repeated that all the way through. That was her
Wow.
mindset. Nobody would argue that Claire doesn't know what she's doing. But even the fast guys, when Lukash was doing it, when he did the 88 record, he was still not coming back any earlier than 40 minutes, unless he was trying to prove a point about getting back quickly, or he knew he needed some maintenance that was taking longer. He was doing about 40 minutes. It seems to be the sweet spot, seems to be around 15, 20 minutes spare time to administrate yourself and potentially get a nap that's effective. But again, you don't, Oriel, who used to have he used to have a really high score on it and had the record before. He turned around and someone asked him once, "Oh, when do you see that you're getting warmed up?" And Oriel said, "After 48 hours, I think I can see what's going on, and I'm settled in."
Oh
And
my
that
God.
seems insane to everybody else. And most of the people around him were saying things like, "That's just rude. That's just disgusting." But it's the same when I did the backyard in America. Laz did a say in there, and it was like, up till 24 hours, it's all little dogs yapping, and we see who the big dogs are at 24 hours. We'll see what big dogs are still barking. And again, that sounds harsh and condescending, but I think it's intended to drive people on and make them determined. It's all psychological, or it
Yeah.
seems to be with Laz. And it is because, we didn't, I can't remember how many we had left at 24 hours, but it wasn't a massive number. I think it was 17 or 18 or whatever at 24 hours. But we did the previous year have 42 left at 100 hours, which was like the biggest amount in the UK,
Wow.
which is the more people you can get to that number, because after that, or certainly my opinion is after that, all the arbitrary targets are gone. Your 50-mile, 100K, 100-mile targets, they're gone. If someone continues after that, they're in it to see how far they can go, which means they're much more likely to push people, and they can see cracks in other people, and they'll go, well, he's looking really good at the moment, but he's not looking so great at the moment. I reckon I could go further than him and they or her, and they just keep pushing and they keep challenging and go, well, she's looking a bit ropey. He's looking this. So it's it's very difficult then to sort of quit if you think that person might break in 5 minutes. So why would I quit? Because they could walk off the course and go, and that person would finish and go, oh, I only had 2 more laps left in me. At that point, you're left with people who are used to winning or being at the sharp end of things, and they're not going to pack in. They're not quitters as such, so they tend to push themselves pretty hard because they've put all that effort in, and all they're going to do is get a dog tag, whereas the other person's going to get, for next year it's £1,000 prize money, and whatever gifts we can scrounge off some sponsors and stuff. But they're going to get a substantial prize. The guy at Thetford got 250 this year. At Suffolk, it was £500 prize. They're going to get that, and then the other person's going to get effectively nothing apart from a little dog tag that everybody else gets that says you DNF'd, and they still have to ring that bell. So for them to push that in that hard, so it makes a very distinct fight, and hopefully it means we get loads of hours. I think in the summer we would have had a much longer time of them running if obviously one person hadn't got injured towards the end, but I think we would have seen a much longer distance out of it. Would have been there for another 24 hours because mentally both of them were still well up for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they could have driven each other pretty far, I think, which is a shame, but it was what it was. But I remember hearing someone say, just as things were, we were in sort of the 24 to 30 lap window, and someone said his friends were trying to encourage him to go around again. He's like, just go jog around with those. Like you can easily run with those people. He's like, they're all jogging. I'm running as fast as I can. Like it just breaks some people down. And this is a good runner as well. If you can't fuel in that tiny window, then you're going to start to drop off pretty quick.
Yeah, and there's weird rules as well. Whatever you take into the corral to go out on the course with, you have to carry. So funny enough, we had a guy this year who had a piece of melon in his hand, and he went to hand it off just after the start whistle. I was like, no, you need to leave with that melon, but that also has to come back into the corral at the end because you can't dump it, even though it's a piece of fruit. We don't want littering in the park and all that. And the rule is you cannot have any support, and that can be including offhanding stuff and things like that. So yeah, it can seem really weird. We don't allow, or the rules don't allow polls. They don't allow any sort of assistance, even moral assistance. There's somebody on the course that clapping you. Obviously, it's a public park. People in the park will be clapping and stuff. But if they see you run by, they're asking what you're doing. But you can't have family members out on the course cheering you and stuff like that, because mentally you might go, oh well, I'll see my wife at this point. I'll see my husband at this point. I'll see my girlfriend here, or my kids will be at this point. That helps push you on. The idea is, no, it's just a lonely 4 miles. You need to be with your own thoughts. And it sounds silly, but it's a safety thing as well. People think you're safer with somebody watching you and popping up at places, but actually you're more likely to encourage yourself to push past what you think is safe, whereas you have to make that decision. That's where Matt Blackburn had that decision when we got the 81 yards one a few years ago with John Stocker, because he got halfway around and was just staring at a sign and went, you know what, I don't feel good, I don't feel safe. But potentially if he'd have had people at that point going, go on mate, keep going, he might have continued. Whereas actually he went, you know what, my marbles are falling out, it's not working, I just need to walk back and finish this. And that's usually what we see. People mentally stop rather than physically. Obviously this year we had the guy got injured, but people tend to mentally quit before they physically quit. I'm sure Robin can sort of agree to that. Most people are still moving okay, but mentally is what's finished them off.
There was one guy who he didn't really have a goal, but he made it all the way to 23 laps. And he was moving fine, but up here he was completely done. And he started the final lap to reach 100 miles. And within 50 meters, turned round to come back, and everyone's screaming on the side, like, "Oh my gosh, you need to be like, please, please."
Oh
Like,
no.
you just one more lap to get to 100 miles, but he walked back, he was done. He could not face doing that one more lap, and maybe 100 miles just didn't mean that much to him in the end. But yeah, it's amazing how it can break people. It really is.
Is it tight? Is the distance calculated that you can't walk it?
No, you can walk it.
You could
The
walk
first
it.
if you're a really good walker, but you won't get much
Too
rest.
quick. Yeah.
No.
So the first backyard we had was run by Richard McChesney, who's the New Zealand record holder for 6-day races and stuff. He did every lap in about 54 minutes or so, until the last couple. And he won it, but he won it with 34 laps and obviously wasn't getting a ton of sleep.
Mm,
Ironically, he's had 3 attempts at Thames Ring and got near the end on all of them, but the lack of sleep has finished him off because you need to run. I would say, even someone who's as unfit and lazy as me at the moment, could run. I can jog round that in 50 minutes by just jogging half of it and walking briskly the other half. It's
okay.
not a
Yeah.
challenge. Robin ran around it, I think, a few times and stuff as well. It's not a difficult course. If you're a fast,
No.
you can complete, but you
Mm,
will then have an accumulative effect because you will only be completing with very little minutes left, and therefore your admin
Yeah.
time will go
Yeah.
down. So,
mm,
but you can easily walk half of that. You need 12-minute miling gets you round in just over 50 minutes. It's like
Mm,
it's not a
mm,
challenging
mm.
course. And the
mm,
distance, for people listening, the distance is designed that at 100 miles is exactly 24 hours, or exactly 24 hours is 100 miles.
Okay.
So that is what it's
Okay.
set as. So that's why it's such an
Interesting.
arbitrary
Yeah. Okay.
4.7 miles.
Well, I was just thinking though, this chat that Robin was describing, for one more lap, he could have walked it if he was feeling that
Absolutely.
broken.
Yeah, but his head had just gone.
His head.
Um,
Yeah.
we get a lot of people
Mhm.
as well in the last few hundred meters before they pop out of the trees. If they know they're going to be close to the time, a lot of them will just stop and walk because they would rather be timed out, not getting across.
Mm.
Because if you come across in that last minute,
mm.
the people are already in the corral waiting to go. So the peer pressure on you to not
God.
quit at that point, to step across the line and turn around and go again, it's immense, the peer pressure, because everyone's going, "Oh, you made it, go another lap." And we'll see people on a spiral of like finishing in the last minute for 3 or 4 laps. But most of them will go out and then turn around and come back because they've given into the peer pressure, and then they get 300 yards out there and go, mentally they've already decided to quit, and they just
Mm.
break, they just fall apart, the body won't do what they tell it anymore, or it will do what they tell it, and that is to stop. But it's weird psychologically. So we see lots of people, and we have a little subheading which Laz uses in his as well. So everyone's DNF, but if you clicked on the timing page, there'd be a subheading on what type of DNF it is. So
Mm.
I don't think anyone else in the UK does that, but we do that because that's what Laz does. And you have a refuse to continue, and that's where you completed the lap in time, but you refuse to go out again. So that's a DNF, but a refuse to continue, which sounds harsh, but they refuse to go out again. Again, it's meant as a psychological thing rather than
Mm.
having a
Mm.
go at people. And the results just show DNF. It's only when you click on it and you get into the nitty gritty, there's a subhead in there. And then there's did not complete. So if they came back by a different route, they might get a did not complete, but we would have to know that and put that on the system. And or they just get a straight timed out sort of finish. So again, it sounds silly, and we all say to people on there, time out on a lap, time out knowing that you went there and you failed to make it back, rather than sitting there 2 days later and going, I reckon I had another 2 laps in me, because you'll just regret yourself, because that's the mentality, and you'll just go, you know, oh, I should have done more. I should have done more. Like, hopefully that means they come back and sign up and do more next time. But it's a difficult thing. We had the same thing in Thetford this year, where a couple of runners, a couple of very good female runners, had targets and they stopped because that was their target, and actually they probably had a few more laps in them. And one in particular could have pushed very close to winning it. But it's a challenge trying to get people to. You got to come there. You got to come to a backyard with no target for distance. Everyone will have something in the head, but if you've got to come with the movie that we made a few years ago when we did the record, the 81 yards thing. that John Stocker was interviewed at the start because he was one of the favourites, and the person interviewing him said, "How many laps do you think you can do if it goes on?" And he just said, "I will do one more than anybody else." And yeah, but how far would that be? What do you think is your maximum? And he just said, "No matter what anyone else does, I will do one more than everybody else."
Mm.
I
And that,
remember him saying that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's very much the psychology. And obviously, everybody, we're talking about people at the sharp end. Not everyone's going to have that target, but even people who think they can only do six, you know, can actually do more or potentially do more
Mm.
if they don't come with a target. The minute you come with six, you'll get to six, and mentally that's a win.
Yeah.
And it is a win. It's a great thing to do, but mentally that's a win. And you go, it's much easier to sell yourself a stop the race. Oh well, I've got my target. It's a success. It's great.
Yeah.
But we might have felt better with 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever. And you might have found we had somebody at Thetford this year who'd never run more than 10K or something, and she did a marathon,
Mm.
Mm.
because she just
Mm.
kept going around and her friends dragged her around. And she'll go away and be massively pleased with that. And we're
Yeah.
pleased that somebody did that. So it's yeah, it's coming with a target is a dangerous thing unless your target is to win. And
The
sound
psychology is fascinating, actually. There's so much to unpick with, yeah, the psychology of the race, the psychology of society today, how we react to things, how we want to push. Yeah, it's yeah, really interesting. I don't know about you. Have you got any more questions on it, Robin? Because I'd quite like to drill Lindley about the spine to
Last one.
Yeah, yeah, go on.
With the 6 hour, they'll be doing 25 miles. That's just shy of a marathon. Is there going to be any wiggle room for people to do one more lap?
No.
No. That
No.
must be frustrating, surely.
We can't let them do partial laps, and it just seems wrong to say it's a 7-hour race.
Yeah.
Um, and there is discussion going on with 100 Marathon Club, for example. They just had a ruling recently because a couple of runners put in and said, can't we count backyard ones because it's still a continuous race, even though you have pauses between it? Can we count any distance over a marathon as a marathon, like they do with general ultras? But unfortunately, the committee said no to that. So even if we did allow it to go to a marathon, whilst they might do a marathon, it still wouldn't count for 100 Marathon Club and stuff because they're saying it's loads of laps that are broken up and forced stops rather than people at, say, a 24-hour race where they choose to stop and rest.
I think that's fair,
Yeah,
actually.
that
I,
makes
I personally don't have an issue. I can see why they're doing it. You know, on a personal note, I might go, well, it is sort of a continuous race. They can't leave, they can't do anything. However, I get why they're doing the rule because otherwise anybody could have massive gaps in between laps and races, and it would
Mm.
then potentially take a lot of races into the scope of counting for 100 Marathon Club. So I sort of get that within their rules. But obviously, a few people really want to come to backyards and they want it to count because they're trying to get their totals up. So that's always a difficult thing because their choice would be then, oh, I'm going to do a marathon that counts that weekend rather than come along and do 6 laps, 7 laps, or whatever in a backyard. But maybe as backyards grow, that rule will soften. But yeah, no. To answer your question, Robin, we're not that nice.
sense.
6 yards, and neither will. A couple of people have already asked and said, "Well, if I get there and I feel good at 6, can I pay you the extra difference to
Mm.
to go further?" And the answer will be no on that as well.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah,
It's
commit.
like you enter
Sign up
what you
to the
want. There's
proper
not,
one.
yeah, there's not a massive difference. Oh, I feel good, so I'll upgrade myself. The difficulty with that is
No.
into like pot hunting and stuff, old rules about pot hunting where people see who the competition is in each distance and then turn up and challenge that, and we don't want to play into that, and plus we want people to enter the one that they think they're going to do.
Yeah, you need to commit to a race. You can't just decide. I've always been a little bit wary of races that where you can drop down to the distance below and you still get a medal. And I think actually I don't agree with that. I think you either commit to a distance and stick to it or fail or not. But I might be slammed for that, sorry.
I would probably agree with you on that. We did have a race a few years ago that allowed people to drop at certain points. Um, but again, I'm my personal thing is you enter the race you did and you either DNF the race that you aimed for,
Mm,
um, rather than potentially again, I'll probably get slammed for the wording of it, but for clutching at success for doing half the distance or a quarter of the distance, because
Yeah.
I know in my head when I used to do more running, in my head I'd be like, I failed at that race.
Yeah.
Dropping
Yeah.
down, I would never consider dropping down, but people, people are different, and some people will go, well, at least I got a 50-mile medal instead of a 100-mile medal. At least I got this, but I don't know many of the larger races that would do that or allow that.
No.
think
No.
I think it fits more into the smaller challenge type events where people turn up for 6 hours, 12 hours, and so on, and they still get a medal for whether it's 1 lap or 10 laps
Mm.
or whatever. And there's absolutely a market for that for people who come along and do those. But it's not a personal thing for me. But as a race organizer, sometimes we will, you will make adjustments based on what you think. Like
Mm.
cutoffs and stuff. We're Start next year, for example, we're going to extend the cutoff by a little bit just because numbers are down, and I think the average pace of runners in general, I think participation's up, but the average pace has dropped a little bit. So I think we
Yes.
can allow a little bit more time. We have a very small window of extra time we can allow because otherwise we start operating in the dark at that event. And if we're in the dark at that event, then we have to start putting head torches and different safety stuff out there. So,
Mm.
and different permissions and risk assessments. So, but we probably got 30 minutes wiggle room on the start and the finish. So we can probably add an hour to it. And hopefully that will encourage more people that it's achievable, even though it's already a reasonably achievable target if you
Mm.
run a reasonable amount of the course. But I think I think it's great more people are taking part. But I think obviously that means that the average pace is
What's the
maybe
cutoff now then?
store is 7 hours at the moment for 30 miles. So it's about 3.4 mile an hour. So somewhere in the region of
Yeah.
16 8-minute miling, somewhere in that area. So it's perfectly achievable as long as you jog a reasonable amount of the course. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have had people complete in time, as a very fast walker. Because if you can walk at, 15-minute miling, which plenty of people can, um, you can complete it in the time. But we've had some feedback from some people who are close to it and stuff, and we can probably wiggle a little bit on that, but not
Mm.
a huge amount. But if it gets more people into the event and gets more people running, then
Yeah.
that's the aim. But yeah, there's always a difficult thing because you can't cater towards the one or two people as an event organizer. You can't cater towards the one or two people who are going to be stretching the cutoffs for a long time, because
Mm.
cutoffs, it's not just a matter of a cutoff. There's a checkpoint staff. There's bills for venues and things like that. So it's you can do it on big events that take lots of money, but small events is quite challenging to hire buildings for much longer.
Yes.
You have to balance with what is, sounds harsh and commercial, but you have to balance what is the value against getting that one person that's going to be an hour late across the line, which is
Mm.
admirable and great to do, but that might mean you keep all the checkpoints open an hour later, and those volunteers also are giving up an hour of their time with nobody coming through a checkpoint, and volunteers can be challenging to get at times. Um, so it's trying to balance everyone's needs, and sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't work out. And there are events that cater more towards the challenge type events.
Yes.
People can walk, over a period of days, a longer route. Look at the South Downs. You've got things from Centurion, which have a strict cutoff, through to like the Trail Walker challenges that run along there that give people 2 days to walk the same distance.
Mm.
So you can
Mm.
absolutely do it differently.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's turn to the spine because it's really not very far away. Um,
It's not just over 3 months.
just over 3 months. I know, but the nights are drawing in. Um, how did you get involved?
So the very first time I got involved must be like 10 years ago now. I was crewing for my partner who was running in the what was then new, the Challenger, as it was called then, is now the Challenger South. I think that was the first or maybe second year that ran. And Might be wrong on that, but I think it was. And I was simply crewing my partner. It was as simple as that. I was jumping along.
Mm.
That was when crews were allowed.
Mm.
Obviously, crews aren't allowed now, but crews were allowed then. So I would meet her at certain points. We had a like camping trailer with a rooftop tent on it, and then she could rest in there. So she'd only go in the checkpoints to clock in and that, and then we could look after her. And I literally worked on that. But obviously, that meant I spoke to people there. I got involved with people at the race. Um, the next year, I spoke to Stu Westfield, who was then the safety manager, and we had a chat. And he said, "Well, if you want to come and volunteer as part of the safety team." So I came and volunteered as part of the safety team. Ended up running one of the safety teams, which I did for a year or two. Then the kit, there was a couple of dramas. I think the second year I did that with kit, in that, and I won't mention names and incidents, but there were basically, the kit list used to be an A4 sheet, and it used to simply be winter sleeping bag, good waterproofs, good, it was a very basic, it was all on one A4 sheet of paper, which was nothing wrong with that when the demographic of people turning up at the race were usually very experienced, skilled hill people and ultra
Mm.
runners. But as the race grew in popularity, you got a bit more of people doing it as a bucket list thing, who maybe hadn't built up the same experience, or had worked in different environments and didn't understand British cold, which is different than alpine cold, and so on. So there was a couple of incidents where it then highlighted that we needed to manage the kit better. And I volunteered to manage some of the kit stuff because I'm a bit geeky as far as kit's concerned. Um, and I and so we started evolving the kit list and kit checks. And back then it was still only 2 races, and I did the kit check for the first couple of days, and then me and my team did the kit check, and then I did the safety coordinator's job for the rest of it. But as it evolved into other races, it became a much bigger fish, and it became almost a full-time job to do the kit. And then we put in place, at the moment now, we've just had a new version published of the kit list. We're just putting some stuff on the website, new formats for it and stuff that should hopefully be on in the next couple of weeks. But the kit is now quite an extensive list. Some of that is because we've had incidents that require us to upgrade the kit to keep, you know, people happy is the wrong word, but to show people that we're managing that risk, and we're providing for it, and we have a very good record of that. Some of it is letting people know, like the poo shovel is one that always gets to people, why we've got to carry a poo shovel and tissue and a poo bag. But we had several incidents one year, probably 4 years ago now, where people were pooing everywhere without any sort of discretion, and we got lots of complaints that year. you know as an example, 2 or 3 poos in the Edel car park. you know
No.
on the Snakes Pass, we had a poo. We had a person in a barn that was owned by a farmer, and the farmer had no problem with people sleeping in there and getting out of the rain and changing and stuff. But this particular farmer, she was upset that people were leaving deposits in the corner of this barn without cleaning it up. Um, and then we had the big incident that triggered it all, was somebody, I think it was going into Dufton, I believe, was obviously caught short, which is fine. They were trying to make it to the toilets in Dufton. They didn't make it. They ducked into somebody's driveway or down the side of their house and made a deposit. Unfortunately, the person could see them from the kitchen window while they were making breakfast. Um, and they're wearing a race number on their pack, so it's not hard to find out where they're from. Um,
Mm.
and so we had to demonstrate that people had the ability to do that. So
Yeah.
so we put carrying a poo shovel and all that. It's stuff I get questioned about all the time. Well, I know what I'm doing. However, we can demonstrate to anybody, and it gives us license as well in future, that if somebody
Yeah.
doesn't dispose of it properly, we can say, but you're carrying the stuff to dispose of it properly. Makes
Yeah.
things like DQing and punishing and penalties much easier if you can say you're supposed to have these things. And you know we're supposed to be trying to be sort of bio responsible and stuff like that, so we want to make sure people have tissues rather than using baby wipes that won't rot and stuff like that, and that they can bury it properly so it will rot, and all of that type of stuff. Or if they can't bury it somewhere because they're on a stony path, they can at least pick it up and carry it to somewhere they can do it. So it's a responsible thing. And most of the kit on the kit list, like when you look at the kit list, people think it's been really pedantic, but the pedantry that I put into it sometimes is because somebody has found a loophole around that. So it
Mm.
used to say spoon, and a very famous runner turned up with a ice cream sorbet spoon that was about a centimeter long, that looked like it came from a doll's house. The kit list, I won't mention the runner, but they did cause a bit of a fuss online a while back. But they basically turned up with a spoon that was not practical for eating or whatever, but technically it said spoon on the kit list. So now the spoon says it must be of a certain size and capable of eating food. And people think I'm just being pedantic with it, but those rules are there because somebody has taken it to the nth degree to
They're
reduce
taking the
waste.
piss.
Yeah. And sometimes that's elite runners obviously trying to reduce their weight, and we're there to stop them taking it too far,
Mm.
because then they get in trouble and they can't, access water, they can't eat properly, they can't, their warm kit is borderline and stuff like that. So we have to have a standard, but that standard isn't really always about the elite guys and girls, because they usually make good decisions. They're fit. When they're not having a good day, they tend to walk off the course themselves. They know when they're having a good day and when they're not. Obviously, they can get
Mm.
injured. Generally, their decision making is good, But further down the course, if you're somebody of my size at the back, you know, a little bit portly, and you're not going very quick, but you think you can wear all the same light kit like Damo or John Kelly or Eugenie, or you know, all of that sort of stuff, you realize that you can't actually do that. If you can be wear, you know, super thin innovate stuff like Sarah Perry would be wearing and stuff like that, you can't, because you're not moving fast enough to generate that heat and stuff. So we want people to have the appropriate kit for their standard and their sizes and stuff. There'll be plenty of people argue that we don't need all that stuff, but there's also difficult legal questions. If we allow people just to choose their own kit and go out on the course, we'll be held responsible for not managing that. You know, the race is too big now to just go, well, they signed a waiver and, you know, they can manage that and they're responsible, because at best case scenario, a court would agree and go, yeah, they made their own responsibility. Worst case scenario, they'll go, but you know, you're putting people out without loads of experience. What are you doing to check that experience, check their navigation skills? What are you doing to make sure they have a map if their GPS doesn't work, and so on? And have they got enough warm kit? And, you know, we get feedback from the mountain rescue teams who do the rescue, the authorities that we get involved with. You know, I have to go to all the authorities and we message them with all our plans and stuff, because I manage the route as well as the kit now. And it's a lot of work. So we have to look after, protect the runners sometimes from themselves. But also we want to make sure that people have the kit out there. So if they twist an ankle, they've got a complete set of, essentially what they've got is a complete set of dry clothes and a sleeping kit. That's the that's the main bit of the kit. You have full
Yeah.
change of dry clothes, because anyone can fall into a bog, or a river or whatever. And if you can change into dry clothes, that will save your race, or maybe even your life. Sleeping bag, bivy bag, that type of stuff. If you get into that, you may have an uncomfortable few hours till we come pick you up, or mountain rescue come pick you up, but you're very unlikely to be dead. You'll probably just be really cold and pissed off. Really cold and pissed off is completely manageable. People getting seriously injured and seriously ill is not something we want on the race. It doesn't do the race any good. It doesn't do that person any good, and it doesn't do trail running any good. So we want to manage that and make sure that's done. Like you say, it's turned into Britain's most brutal kit check, and part of that, some of that is probably my fault or my personality, because on social media I'm very blunt and matter of fact and black and white. And I find that's necessary, because if you give people wiggle room, I'd rather they think I'm going to be an absolute twat when they get there, and think I'm going to be horrible because I've been very short with them or strict with them on the emails. Um, and then they get there and they haven't got something right, and we'll do our best to help them. You know, we sell them some spare stuff or whatever. But I'd rather they came with that fear than turning up and going, oh, it'll be all right. They'll loan us something. They'll do this. They'll help us with something, because we can't help everybody, and we'd run out, and then we'd have to have a really difficult conversation about saying you can't race because you haven't got a suitable sleep or whatever. I'd rather people do that, and I don't. You know, it's that old phrase, isn't it? Facts don't care about feelings. It's like a fact is a fact. How you feel about it, or what your personal experience. I get lots of emails going. I got one literally a couple of days ago. But I've never had to carry a sleeping bag on a 40-mile race. They're doing the sprint. You know, this is ridiculous. Blah blah blah. And I've gone. It does Hypothermia doesn't care how far you ran. You'll get as cold on Ladder Rocks, which is 20 odd miles in, which we've done 2 rescues over the years at. We've rescued people there a couple of times now on the shorter races, and they've had to, because the weather's been bad, we've had to wait 4 to 6 hours for MRT to get there. Then it takes MRT another few hours to walk them off the course. If those people aren't in their sleeping bag, they're going to be in a lot of bother. And even if they can't put themselves in their sleeping bag, the next runner along isn't having to sabotage their race by loaning them their kit. That next runner along knows they've got the gear in the bag. Whilst a lot of people feel it's a very onerous kit list, and if I was running personally, I wouldn't take half of that stuff. But you can take personal risk as opposed to risk that the race is willing to accept and manage. And that's sometimes difficult for people to get, particularly people from other countries who come from a completely different environment. And we get people from really cold environments who go, oh, but I live in Sweden and on top of the mountains, it's -15 and I need tinted glasses because I'm going to get snow blindness. And I'm like, nobody gets snow blindness on the Pennine Way. It just sucks the light out of everything. It's a black bog of doom, you know. It's a very long, wet, shitty walk. It's it, you do not need, so we haven't got the angle. You're not at the altitude. You're not going to get snow blindness, even if there is snow. You're not going to be out long enough with it. decent patch of snow, the sun isn't right for it. But people don't know that. Well, I can go there and I only need this vest and this thing, and it's like, yes, but in Britain, you're not just going to be cold. You're going to be piss wet through. You're going to be soaking wet. You're going to have wind and rain, and this. You're going to have a combination of the potentially the worst combination, because as the old sort of wives' tale thing, it gets into your bones. The cold. You're going to get soaking wet, and water takes heat away, obviously 20 times faster than air, and you're going to get so much colder by being wet. So having a spare set of dry clothes you can actually change into and all that does make a difference. We've recently upgraded from a mid layer to an insulated jacket in both races, even the summer one, because we were getting loads of people that were super cold. And it's like, well, if you're not making good choices about how thick your layers are, we're going to make you make a choice of having an actual insulated item. And that was quite successful, because this year we had no rescues on the winter or
Yeah.
the summer in the Cheviot area, which is when people get most tired and have most of the problems with the cold. So it's been a success. Hasn't pleased everybody, because an insulated jacket is generally heavier than a thin mid layer, but it's not always about one individual. It's about getting everybody through as safe as we can, which is the aim.
Mm. Oh, well, I mean, it's a subject close to my heart, because I work with now 4, and we've just gone through 13 valleys, and the insulated jacket is yeah, an item of great controversy, um, mainly because so many people turn up with jackets that are appropriate for running in for activity. So they got some insulation on the torso, but nothing down the sides. They're sort of just banners here. And we're
Yeah,
like, no, that's not, you can't have that. This isn't for running in. This is for emergencies only.
it's such a difficult thing. And jackets like you're talking about, the ones with the panels on the sides and on the back, on the inside of the sleeves, a good example would be the Rab Cirrus Flex is one of those, and we get a lot of it. Now we do allow them to go through as an insulated jacket, as long as they only have the slim bits around the side and on the inside of the sleeve, on the basis that if they're sitting cold, they'll be huddled and those areas will be covered, which is the design feature of that. But
Okay.
there are other ones which don't have insulation in the back, because they know you're going to have your pack on or be in your sleeping bag or stuff like that. Or some of them, like the Montaigne, have a massive range of stuff, but they have fibre nano light type one, a nano I think it is, and that doesn't have any insulation in the arms, because
Mm,
again it's supposed
mm,
to be an active insulation, and we say no to that. It has to cover the vast majority of the item.
yeah.
We will let things like the Cirrus Flex and other similar ones, Patagonia have one as well, the same, where it's just a small panel on the inside of the arm, and just down the side, and they just put them in like flexibility panels. But anything more than that, and we won't allow that either. And fleece has been the bane over the last couple of years, the wording, because we've said we don't want to get rid of people, because there are some very good insulating fleece garments, like Montaigne have their XBD, Rab have their original pile, and and then you look at things that are like Buffalo, that's technically, it's not a waterproof item, it's a piled fleece item, so
Mm,
stuff like that. So we've been allowing fleece items, but now people have started turning up with just your average regatta mid-layer fleece and stuff, and they're not insulating. They don't have insulating properties to the
no.
extent that we require. So we've sort of literally just recently, I've reworded the kit list to say it can only be pile fleece, because that's the only thing that's actually going to insulate well enough. It's fluffy enough to hold potentially enough air, like any sort of thin. But people are now finding there's lots of companies doing ones that technically the whole garment's insulated, but it's only 20 grams of premium loft gold over the whole garment, rather than
Mm,
the normal 40 or 60 per
mm,
square inch or per square meter. But it's like, so companies are getting wise to that as well, and they're making things even lighter. And it's really hard for us to have an arbitrary list that says, the difficulty is people come to me and go, well, this, and I might look at something and go, that's a good jacket, but it doesn't meet the criteria, so therefore it's a fail. And someone else might buy a cheap down jacket that meets the criteria, but probably isn't as good as the other thing. But we have to have a black and white standard. Simply, it has to be down, or it has to be really thick pile fleece, and the down can be synthetic or natural.
yeah.
And there's loads of arguments about those as well. About, obviously, synthetic will hold its insulation properties a little bit better when it's wet, or quite a bit better in most cases. But hydrophobic down's getting close to that now as well, so it's quite a different one. a good hydrophobic down jacket is going to be better than a cheap synthetic jacket, because the quality's there and the way it insulates and that. So it's really hard to rule out one particular thing. But that's the stuff I get on emails. Like, probably I had 10 emails yesterday, and I've had about 3 probably while listening to you and doing this. As we approach the races, we're at that stage of about 3 months out where people are getting excited and now starting to look at the kit,
Yeah.
the items.
Yeah. And
So
they're
I
asking for it for Christmas and stuff, aren't they? So,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, like, we've just changed the requirement for not having to watches have improved dramatically over the last few years. So we're going to allow watches as long as they have full color topographical mapping on them. So you don't have to necessarily carry a handheld. I would still argue a handheld's better. It's a bigger screen. You can usually change the batteries. They're easy to charge. You still have
mm,
your watches backup,
mm,
but not everyone wants to buy another handheld. And the honest truth is, people buy handhelds and then they just put them in their pack and they never use it. They never train with it. So
yeah.
sometimes having a watch that they use daily might be a better thing for them. So we've
Mm,
softened that a little bit for winter. Um,
interesting.
but they're not going to save much weight, because the caveat is, because you're now carrying a watch, or you're using a watch as your primary instead of a handheld, we're making you carry a power bank and a lead. Because your watch won't be able to change the batteries. You're gonna So as
Mm.
far as the weight saving is concerned, the weight of a watch compared to the
But
weight of an E-Trex with a cable.
surely everyone would carry a power bank regardless for their phone. I mean, they must have to have a phone, don't they, to be able to for
They have
emergencies.
they have to have a phone. They have to leave a checkpoint with 50% charge on it as a minimum. Um, and they have to have the ability to charge, is what's written in it. So the minimum is a cable, so that they can be charged by somebody else, or by crew, or by safety teams or something. We
Mm,
haven't ever really put a power bank in there as a necessary, because the rule on Spine is they don't have to have their phone off. It can be off. They don't have
mm,
it on. So therefore their charge would last. And if we need to send them a text message or something, we will put up in a checkpoint, or we'll put up a sign on the route saying, turn your phone on. And then what happens is they turn their phone on and they pick up the message saying there's a diversion, or whatever safety message that wants to be given to them. But we have never enforced them having to keep it on all the time. Therefore, we haven't enforced them carrying a power bank. Most people will, because they can charge that. They can charge their head torch. A lot more head torches are coming with internal batteries. You can get a bigger battery in if it's internal, and you can make it more waterproof. However, you can't change the battery, which means you've got to be able to charge it. Which means now we're making people carry a second head torch if their head torch has a rechargeable battery that they can't swap. Because most of there's only 2, maybe 3 brands that will actually work while you're charging them.
mm-hmm.
Most of them
Yeah.
don't work, and if they do work, they'll only work on the lowest setting, not the brighter settings. And most of them, even though, apart from one brand or 2 now, because Phoenix have started doing charging ports on the bottom, there's only 1 or 2 of them that actually you could wear the thing while you're charging, because most of the charging ports are on the rear of the head torch. And
Yeah.
you can't wear that. People will tell me, oh, I'll hold it in my hand, I'll do this, but now they're not using their poles or whatever. So we've only recently gone over to, you have to have a second head torch if your first one can't change the batteries. I would always recommend a second smaller one anyway, because how do you change the batteries in the other one? it, but we're trying to keep it as minimal as possible, because people think the kit list is onerous, and we're trying to keep it as as much as we prescribe a lot of detail. We're trying to give people as many options to buy whatever brand type they want. Even though we're Montaigne sponsored, we don't push people towards all the Montaigne gear. If people ask me advice, I'll generally just give them the advice of what I think is the best within their budget. That might be a
Mm,
Montaigne piece of kit, because there's some excellent kit there that works for the race. But
mm,
that might be, you can buy a Go Outdoors item that will perform close to that for, half the price.
yeah.
Especially sleeping bags and that. I've had 2 this morning before we had this chat about sleeping bags. And sleeping bags are always that thing. If you don't really know about sleeping bags, there's a lot of advertising out there that says this is a super light sleeping bag, and it's 1.6 kilos, which is, in nobody's outdoor business, is a super light sleeping bag. But it's, if someone comes from the military, where the sleeping bag in the military is 3.2 kilos, that's a super light sleeping bag.
Mm,
Then they've
yeah.
got then they've got to put it in a pack. They're not spending, like, I don't know, 650 quid on a PhD or a Rab Mythic Ultra, or importing a Japanese Nanga, which is the lightest one in the world you can buy. They're not doing that sort of stuff. But you can, if you want to spend 400 or 500 quid, you can get that weight from that 1 odd kilos. You can get that down to 315 grams, and the size of a Nalgene bottle for a winter rated sleeping bag. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
But you have to chuck some money at it. Not everyone wants to chuck money at it. Some people will
No.
Some people will hire gear. Rab do some hire. A couple of other companies do some hire of Van Gogh kit, and that's some walking companies. The problem is they're usually not hiring the super light fancy bags. They're hiring the big heavy things. There are some good brands out there doing some really cheap stuff, and then there are some dodgy stuff on Amazon and that. Where got an email the other day, a sleeping bag on Amazon, and it was like, oh, this one's good from -35 to +30 or something, and you're like, £35 and it only weighed 600 grams, and I'm like, that's just impossible. You read through the adverts and you're like, there's no way you couldn't even buy that amount of down for that price. But it's hard if you don't know. You just see this advert.
It is, isn't it? You're fighting sort of massive marketing budgets that are shouting about their stuff that the average punter doesn't know. They see waterproof, they see light.
Yeah. We had a guy this year in the summer turn up with trousers from Salomon that were only waterproof on the front.
Yeah.
They're a genuine item they sell. I expect they're for alpine uphill running, and therefore they work fine for that. And as a super lightweight, keep the water off your thighs. They're probably excellent. But he was sold, and I won't name the shop, those by an online shop who told him these will pass kit check and they'll be awesome. And they're super light. They cost twice as much as like a standard pair of Salomon Bonatis, but they were half as waterproof.
Oh no.
But
Oh, yeah.
he got quite upset when I, challenged him, and lucky enough the kit checker spotted there was only tape seams on the front bits of the trousers. Otherwise he might have scraped through, and then he would have been sitting in a puddle of water wondering why he was getting wet. But
Yeah.
but I made him. We carry some spares, and I found an old pair of D&V ones that we use on D&V courses and stuff, and they were like pack and mac heavy plastic bin bag type ones. So we made him carry those. We charged him like 10 quid, and he got it back when he returned them and stuff like that. But it's like we will hire out. Like, I have a stock of 5 or 6 sleeping bags that are from Go Outdoors. Funny enough, they've got some really good stuff, and we will loan it for people. So basically, they pay me the cost of buying the sleeping bag in case they don't send it back. And then when they do send it back, I give them everything back, less 25 quid as a cleaning fee for the sleeping bag. Because we don't want people to not do the race. They've invested
No.
a substantial amount of money in the race, probably a lot of time and emotion into the race. And then they turn up. And hopefully we feel that with me doing this role and answering emails and all of that sort of stuff on a regular basis, and I'm usually fairly quick at those, we give everybody every opportunity to get the kit right. That doesn't mean they get the kit right all the time, but we give everybody every opportunity to get the kit right. And then if they don't get it right, it's not our fault. We haven't explained something properly. They'd have every chance to check every piece of kit via email. And hopefully, there's not a lot of races will give that level of support. And hopefully that means that we can get everybody on the start line. We've never so far managed to not fix a problem with kit before the start of the race. We've always managed to find spares, get them to buy some, talk to the local shops in Hathersage and stuff, and get things fixed. Haven't always pleased people doing that, but we had a oh, I won't say, going to say their nationality, but we had a guy this year in summer was missing 13 items off the kit list at kit check. He just believed that he didn't have to carry it, and he told his French friends, who told him that he absolutely had to, and we were going to be really strict. And he was like, "No, I've never had to carry these in Europe. I don't need it." He got a little bit upset when we made him spend 470 odd quid on kit, and then loaned him a bag because his bag was now not big enough to carry all that kit.
Oh God.
And we did actually loan him a bag for that and just gave him one of ours. But and he was quite upset to the point where he was almost out of the race. Well, he said he was going to quit and not do the race. And I said, it's fine, we'll take you off the entry list. And then he realized he was just having a bit of a strop, and we helped him out as best we can. And he, gave all the kit back and stuff. And actually, I don't think he gave the sleeping bag back. I think he kept that, which he obviously got billed for. But yeah, it's people don't know, and some of it is that, and I'm sure you guys have been to races where they have a kit list and they don't check at the start, or they say they're going to be strict on kit and don't check at the start, or they maybe do a couple of randoms during the event, and therefore the risk of getting caught without those things is very low, and therefore it's worth taking that risk. I remember, I think in some of the very early Lakeland hundreds, there was people stashing kit. So they would run along, drop the kit, because the guys there also do like the spine. They do a full kit check for everybody at the start, but they would drop in kit, and someone was picking it up, and then that would be dropped off just before the finish. I think someone got caught doing that one year.
No,
The stuff stashed. You
you're
know,
kidding.
it's it's that phrase, you're only cheating yourself and you're running your own risk. We had a guy turn up and on winter race once, and he got to Greg's hut, and I think he was missing, well, we stopped counting at 17 items missing out of the 31 at Greg's hut, because he was found to not have his cooking kit and his sleeping kit, and it was really cold, and he was told to get in his sleeping bag. And yeah, and that I think was more of a language communication thing. But again, because the races that they normally didn't enforce it or weren't strict, and made a lot of things optional depending on the weather, we'd rather just be black and white. The kit list won't change. We won't, like UTMB series races, we won't have a winter or a cold weather version and a warm weather version. We just have, that's the kit. It covers every possible
Yeah.
eventuality. And yes, if it's summer and it's a blazing hot day, you're going to be carrying some more and sweating some more. But if the weather turns, you also have all the kit.
Well, it
It's
also equalizes everyone as well, doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely. The elite guys get exactly the same treatment. They come through the same kit check. They stand next to the same people. And the other runners, when I first took it over, that was one of the things we really were being strict on. We wanted to make sure that everyone saw that even the top guys were getting exactly the same treatment, you know. And initially, those first couple of years, there were quite a lot of arguments because people were skipping through with basic kit, and it was, oh yeah, that's such and such. We know he's fine. He's a good runner, and we sort of binned that, and we were quite strict, and that meant upsetting some people's feelings sometimes. But we got more feedback from the rest of the runners in those years, from people going, you know what, at least I know such and such has
Mm.
all the kit. You know, Centurion had a similar thing, didn't they, a few years ago, where someone was posting this person couldn't possibly have the kit on when they got to the finish, and James did absolutely the right thing, and they videoed him getting all of his kit out at the finish of the race, and he had everything. He just had super light, minimal kit.
Yeah.
But we get it all the time on the race. People report to me during the race because I'm responsible for the penalties and who we give penalties to, and going out and checking kit and stuff. And I get messages all the time going, oh, such and such has the tiniest bag possible. I think one of them was even Chris Cope. He's got the tiniest bag possible. There's no way he's got all that kit there, because I've got a 40-litre rucksack and he's running with a 12-litre Salomon vest. And I'm like, I did his kit check. He absolutely has everything.
Yeah.
We may have checked them at the end and stuff like that, but we've generally not found that's necessary, because we've now built up this culture of, it's Lindley, he's super strict, he doesn't care, he'll just make you carry the kit. I think
Yeah.
we've built that reputation up now, that people know not to mess around, because they don't want to jeopardize what is, you know, a race they've put a lot of time and effort and money into. Why would you do that for the sake of a few 100 grams? It
Yeah.
seems like suicide to me, but spend 1,500 quid and get told to go home.
Yeah. God, can you imagine? Right. Well, gosh, I mean, this has been amazing. Robin, have you got any more questions, or should we let
No, I
go?
don't. I don't. I'm afraid. Yeah, no, that was awesome.
No. Okay. Well, let's just finish off with our standard questions now that we
Yeah,
ask. Really. Very boring, but we just got a few little things here. Do you prefer dogs or cats?
dogs.
Books or movies?
Mostly I read books, usually audible books while I'm driving along and stuff like that. But I'm very much a book person. I read something every night before I go to sleep.
Oh, nice. Gels or solids?
Solids.
Weights or treadmill?
I'd probably say weights. If I do exercise, I tend to prefer outside. Prefer to go out and walk or run outside.
Porridge or toast?
Toast.
And mud or bog?
How deep's the bog? Um, um, mud would be fine. Go for mud. Yeah,
Okay. Brilliant. Well, Lily, honestly, we could have just kept going, to be honest, but it's been fascinating, really interesting to talk to you. All the best at Sort 30.
yeah,
It's in a couple of weeks, isn't it?
yeah.
And maybe see you at the Spine. I'm holding off offering my services, but I'm hoping to be up there. So
Or
I'll see you around.
see you at backyard next year.
Yes, quite
Absolutely.
possibly. Quite possibly.
I'm
Mm.
sure Robin can get some good video of you there for Run Ultra.
Absolutely can. Yeah. Hey, a great idea. Okay.
Yeah, that can be a nice feature, can't it? Kate does the Suffolk Backyard Ultra.
Oh, it's got a great ring to it.
Kate DNFs the backyard ultra after 6 laps.
Everybody DNFs apart
Yeah.
from one, so there's no shame.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Yeah.